All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, we are back with another Thomas Sowell video, man. We got what is the root cause of this problem in Britain and the US? I don't know what this is about to be, about, but again, I appreciate you guys coming over and watching. Shout out to all the good humans. I told you when this brother speak, I listen. So much knowledge, so much wisdom. You know, a lot of stuff I didn't know about or didn't know how much detail about this brother has brought to light. So thank you, brother, for your wisdom. Again, appreciate all the love and support. We ain't gonna waste no more time. Shout out to all the good humans. Did I say that already? Link is always in the description for those who are asking. We ain't gonna waste no more time. Let's jump right into it.
I'm quoting you. Despite the grand myth that black economic progress began or accelerated with the passage of the civil rights laws and the war on poverty programs of the 1960s, the fact is that the poverty rate among blacks fell from 87% in 1940 to 47% in 1960. But over the next 20 years, the poverty rate among blacks fell another 18 percentage points.
Wait, he said 1940 to 40. Let me hear him say it again.
Blacks fell from 87% in 1940 to 47% in 1960.
Sheesh.
But over the next 20 years, the poverty rate among blacks fell another 18 percentage points. This was just the continuation of a previous economic trend, but at a slower rate of progress. It was not some grand deliverance, close quote. That is so counter to what we are taught in school, what appears on the editorial pages of newspapers, that I feel as though I want to ask you, you really want to stick with that assertion?
I have more evidence in my most recent book, Discrimination and Disparities. I point out that this really is a pattern not peculiar to blacks or even to the United States, that you can see the same thing in England, you can see it in any number of other countries, that the poor were much worse off economically, let's say in the first half of the 20th century. And yet, in terms of their own behavior, they were far more decent societies. And afterwards, after this welfare state that's supposed to make them better off and better human beings, that's when the crime rate skyrocketed.
Man.
On both sides of the Atlantic. The British were famous for being perhaps the most polite, considerate society in the world prior to that. After that, you get things like the 2011 riots over there, went through London, Manchester, where they're going through this. They anticipated Ferguson and Baltimore by a few years. And the same things, the burning down of buildings, the throwing of gasoline bombs, the whole schmear. And none of those people were descendants of slaves.
So the poor people were doing, if the lesson of the 20th century is something like poor people, including in this country, African Americans, were improving their lot and leading fundamentally decent lives until the government decided to help them.
Yeah, yes.
That's a fair statement.
Well, they're better off economically because of what's been given.
Right.
But of course, when you have the crime rate, I mean, I got the first inkling of this some years back when I was at some school in Harlem doing some research, and I had looked out the window and I mentioned in passing that when I was a little kid, I used to walk my dog in that park, and looks of horror came over the students' faces. Nobody in his right mind would have a child go into that park, walking a dog or not. The principal was warning these students not to cross this park, which was about a block and a half wide, even in groups of 6. And when I tell them about how in these hot summer nights I would sleep out on the fire escapes in Harlem,
Oh, yeah.
they looked at me like I was a man from Mars. People were doing that.
Yeah, I grew up like, it's still today, still to this day, is certain areas you should not be going. All right. whether it's going over there wearing a certain color or whatever the case may be. But growing up, like I said, it's just certain areas like you don't even have to be involved in gangs. People will, you could be walking somewhere and you can get jumped into a game or just jump in general, like, because that's sometimes, it's a way of initiation. Like, hey, go beat that dude up and now you from the hood, you know. Just it's all types of forms of initiation. Like, the whole, like, if you see somebody driving with their lights off, hey, do not tell them to cut their lights on. Because it was this thing going around, I don't know if it still is, but you drive with your lights off, somebody tell you to cut them on, like, you flick your lights at someone, like, yo, your lights is off, and they end up following you. It was like a gang initiation thing that was going on. So, hey, first person to tell you to cut your lights on, follow them. It's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on in this world, man. A lot. And he's saying that back in the day, he used to sleep out on a fire escape. But you can't do that because all the gunshots now. Wow.
All over New York. They were doing it in Philadelphia, Washington, wherever I've known people. That was a common thing for poor people. We didn't have the money for air conditioning.
Right.
Yeah.
You slept out on the fire escape or in the parks. Where Walter grew up
Walter Williams.
Walter Williams grew up in a housing project in Philadelphia. He was saying on the hot summer nights, the people would be in this project would have little balconies. They'd sleep out on the balconies, and the ones on the first floor who didn't have balconies would sleep out in the yard. And that there were older
crazy.
men who you could see sit on a hot summer night, sitting outdoors into the wee hours playing cards or checkers or whatever. It was a different world.
Yeah.
And
It was a safe world.
and it was infinitely safer.
Now, what about family structure, Tom? Again, I'm quoting you. Most black children were being raised in two-parent families in 1960. 30 years after the liberal welfare state, the great majority of black children were being raised by single parents.
Yes.
How does
What
that? By the way,
happened?
we should note that Patrick Moynihan publishes the Moynihan Report in 1965.
Yes.
And he's alarmed because the illegitimacy rate among black families is 25% then. Now, among whites, it's over a third.
Yes.
Hispanics, it's over half. And among African Americans, it's over 70%. What's going on there?
Well, this is again, this too. You find the same thing in Britain. You find it in France and Norway. You find it in the Western world. In fact,
The dissolution of the family structure.
Oh yeah, there are any number of Western nations where 40% of the children are raised with only one parent.
Right.
At the extremes, compared to Asian countries, at the extremes, Iceland, it's 2 out of 3 children born are raised in a single-parent home. In South Korea, it's 1 out of 66.
Wow.
Man.
Wow.
1 out of
And so,
66.
That's the welfare state? What?
Yes.
It is.
Oh, you're paying. You're creating a situation where if the first of all, you're creating a situation where if the man stays there, the government will not give the woman welfare, and if he leaves, it will. And so they're paying. When you pay people not to get married, more people don't get married.
Right. Okay. So what would have happened
Dang, man.
if Lyndon Johnson, instead of becoming a liberal, had remained a crusty, tough, skeptical Texas conservative,
Yes.
which is certainly the way he started his career. If Lyndon Johnson had embraced the constrained vision instead of instituting the war on poverty and the Great Society and so forth, what would the country look like today?
A lot better. You would not have the same rates for crime and so on. Because you see, you can't have a welfare state in a democratic country unless you first have a welfare state vision. And when you buy all the assumptions of that vision, then you're buying a lot of trouble. One of the episodes I think epitomized it was in France in this case. That there were knife attacks by various people from North Africa against Chinese people in some suburb of Paris. And one of the things that the attackers said, that why are you attacking the Chinese? And it wasn't because of anything the Chinese had done to them. He said they have nice clothes and big cars. That's not fair. I mean, that's, egalitarianism as a philosophy is one thing, but the actual consequences of it mean things like resenting other people's good fortune. Right.
Man, paying people to not get married. Dang, man. I swear when this brother be talking and he breaks these conversations down and these questions down, man, it's like growing up, just going back and looking at things. As a person who was on welfare, um, I mean, my parents were married, but I just looking back like, man, it's a lot of stuff that I noticed today. I mean, like I feel like I was again too young to even do anything about anything, but just growing up and just everything that I witnessed and seen, and when you hear him talk, like you know your brain is always conditioned a way. When you're raised a certain way, your brain is going to be conditioned that way until you get either old enough to look at things yourself and make your own decisions, or whatever the case may be. But you know, at this point in my life, in my mind state where I'm just looking back at things, I'm just like, boy, it's like it's half and half. You know, I'm glad I grew up the way I did because it made me grateful and humble. But at the same time, I felt like I had a head start that I didn't know about. You know, that's what it kind of feels like. But all right, hey, again, appreciate you guys coming over and watching. Shout out to Brother Soul. See what else they got. I told you, man, this brother wisdom is top tier. Top tier. Peace out.